how do we find ourselves? How do we find that authenticity, that vulnerability in a safe environment? And even when I was an intern as a psychology intern for counseling and therapy, I was doing so many home visits. Unbeknownst to myself, I ended up organizing a pantry for a really busy mom for parenting. I'd go in for parenting skills and communication to her little toddlers or preschoolers, but we ended up cleaning her pantry, or I had couples counseling where I visited their home and we ended up in their little tiny bathroom with one sink, having conflict about it. How do we navigate our boundaries ourselves in a sacred space like our home to improve our mood and our relationships?
In both those examples you gave, actually in the few ones, I feel like that's so clear because you can see visually how what we're dealing with internally or even interrelationally is reflected in the environment. I know that's a big thing that you focus on. We'll dive a little bit more. How do you think things that we're dealing with in our relationships and even with ourselves, the inner work, the just blocks we're having, anything like that, because you've got such a strong background in therapy and in understanding people, how is that often reflected in our homes? Like, what are some things that you could just go into someone's house and you would maybe recognize that say something about them?
I'm super into just that energy. And again, when I visit a home therapy session, now it's more interior design clients, but they know I have the therapeutic background. My first instinct and observation is, what's the physical climate and the emotional climate? And are they cohesive? Are they aligned? Or are they fighting each other? A lot of times people ask me to go into their homes to renovate. So obviously there's things fighting against each other, whether it's the function or the aesthetics. And then lo and behold, later as I interview the families or the partners or persons living in the home for the renovation, it's, oh, you know what? Our relational conflicts happen a lot in this entryway, or the laundry room is in the garage and we just none of us want to do laundry. It's such a hassle to go in there. There's a lot of pain points that your physical environment and your emotional environment are intertwined. But first, it's really that energy that you feel. And sometimes we can describe it. Sometimes we need an expert to come in and help you untangle it. But really, it's that energy. And then it gets played out in our physical environment, right? Oh yeah, that messy kitchen countertop, that might be a reflection of my not wanting, my resistance of having healthier meals because I have this ambivalence about meal prepping or taking care of myself. You can go layer by layer.
Even when you were saying before, I think one of the examples was the couple who's having, they keep kind of having these disputes and conflicts, and then that materializes with sharing the one sink, or you can see how that would affect you. And I'm sure people listening will notice there's one part of their house that maybe just sticks out, that is this point of pain that you're talking about.
Yes. And it can be something that we live with, because if you think about it, and this is why I love sharing about home therapy, is bringing in that awareness, that introspective attitude of how can my home serve me? How can my home heal me or help heal me? And maybe it's a trauma, maybe it's just relational conflict, or maybe it's just anxiety about certain things that aren't as big, but they can be situational. I think it really comes down to finding that core desire, which is, in other words, finding your why. So for me, when I go into a space, it's really, what is my core desire in this space? How will it work for me a little better, more efficient? And honestly, how will it heal me?
I love this because we'll go into, you have very distinct realms of how you create that, which goes well beyond what most people think about. And I want to go through them. I also want to make sure we go through your journey. And I also want to raise my hand and say that I've totally been guilty of this. Everyone listening probably has. And I was just thinking when you were speaking of when I was in New York, I was 25 and my boyfriend, now husband, came to visit, and it bothered him so much that in that room, I didn't have curtains up in the bedroom I was staying. He's like, why don't you put curtains up? And it was this deeper issue of, well, I don't know if I'm going to stay here. I don't know if this is going to be home. I don't know if I want to really put anything like that. So I think there's big and small things that people will start to notice?
We have a routine, right? After work, we come home, we feed our pet, or we take off our shoes and put our work bag away. And maybe we get into our favorite sweats and, watch some TV or stream a movie. Like it's just very routine. But if we can pay a little bit more attention to the space around us, I think that's again, it will reveal so much more to our advantage in making our home ours.
How did you specifically start to go into that transition of making your home each person's? Because I know you've referenced some examples of when you were doing your work in therapy and you were just put in people's homes and noticing this stuff. What was the moment or the moments where you started to see, like, actually, this is something that I can really help people do?
My aha moment was when I really started getting more of a creative itch. So not only am I a therapist for 20 years, but I'm also a super creative person. Like my mom loves watercolor. My dad's an architect. Growing up, we always, did things around the house and just a very creative family. And so after 20 years of doing therapy in like four walls in an office, I really wanted to expand my creativity in interior design because that was such a passion of mine. On the side, besides doing therapy, I was that go-to friend that knew the paint colors at Benjamin Moore or knew the best home goods in the neighborhood. I just felt to a point where I'm like, I want to help people beyond the therapy walls. I kind of just started my business on the side. And then pretty soon my design business was growing equally or bigger than my therapy business. And I kind of just took a leap of faith, honestly.
That is so fascinating because it's like you already had the background with some of this creative flair and growing up with it. I'm sure you grew up with lots of imagery and color and then I know the therapeutic world can be, I haven't been on the practitioner side, but I've been on the other side, that it can be quite sterile, formulaic. And it must be, it must have been so interesting to then be able to switch and say, I'm going to pull this together and I'm going to create magic in people's homes.
Yes, it's so funny because when the faux plants started coming back, which I love, like there's so many people who are allergic, but that ficus tree, because there's always a dusty ficus tree in the corner of a therapist's office, that was such PTSD for me. I'm like, I cannot design with a ficus tree. Like I can't. So yeah, it just was, I just had this creative itch. And then that's when I just started thinking. And then when I did interior design clients' homes, it naturally came to me, right? My therapist hat naturally came on when there were disagreements about tile, disagreements on budget, disagreements like two teenagers sharing a bathroom, who's going to win? Partners, one wants a more masculine guest room. The other one wants a more feminine dining room. Like, how do we navigate all that? So lo and behold, naturally, my therapist hat and my design kind of melded together into something really fun and creative. But also what I love about it is sharing with people how our brains work, with the colors, the neuroscience part of it, how our retinas transmit the messages to the brain. And that's why certain colors are more soothing. The science part is really exciting for me to share.
Ooh, what are, let's say, three really interesting things that tie in design with the science and how we feel?
Number one, and because I'm totally into sunshine, vitamin D, is the way that natural light, and if you don't have natural light all the time, those happy lights, the mood lights, how light really impacts our mood. So when you are designing your home or when you're thinking about what's the first thing I should do, I always tell people, easy fix, find some light. And so if you have dark drapery, maybe do roller shades that are blackout shades and then add some lighter drapery so that you can let the light in when you don't need to sleep in in a darker room. Just really letting light in. Our brains are so happy with that dopamine, that serotonin level. To me, number one, definitely easy way to feel good at home. Second, color. Colors really add that energizing mood to a space that you want to feel productive. And so adding some energetic colors to your productive work from home space or your office is not a bad idea. You don't have to be all four walls of energetic colors, but my tip, you can add pops of reds, oranges, yellows. What I like to do is when you pick paint colors, have a gray undertone so it's muted, and that muted energizing color will not jar you. And then the third is tactile, how you feel in things. So I love linen bed sheets. I love breathable things when I sleep because I'm a hot sleeper. But yeah, so it's really finding breathable bedding, your throw pillows in your living room, like finding things that visually are enticing, but also something that feels good when you're sitting on it or sleeping in it. Those are 3 neuroscience facts that I think you can really incorporate your home so that it feels calmer.
Thank you for sharing them, because I feel like too, just hearing them, you can see the opposite side of it is if you think about rooms you don't like in your home or your apartment or wherever you are, or places you don't like to visit, it probably has something to do with the color, the lack of light, the texture, maybe of the seats, right? That you're in, or they're not so comfortable, things like that. I love an accent wall. We actually have a red one here, which wouldn't have been my choice. It was the previous owners, but it's actually nice.
That's why I think we should throw out all our design rules in our heads, taking away your limiting beliefs. All or nothing thinking, the black and white thinking of like, my home should be this way because this is what success is. Shedding all those limiting beliefs, finding what works for you. And that's where authenticity and vulnerability can be shared. It can be birthed. And that's where we really start becoming our whole self.
Touches so nicely on the actual methodology of how you bring design to life for people and tie it in with their well-being. I'm specifically thinking of the individual domain you talk about in your book, where if you want to explore that a little bit with the listeners of how you are inside is going to be kind of one of the first steps towards building your environment around you that feels aligned. Thank you so much for listening. This is the end of part 1. If you want to know more, you can go on to part 2. You can also find Anita's book, Home Therapy, or listen to her podcast. And I will see you in the next one.